We're going to go ahead and get started. I'm Tracy Skalberg, and I'm with Grand Island Public Schools Foundation. We are here to learn about scholarship essays tonight. We have the esteemed George Ayoub with us tonight as our trainer on scholarship essays and college essays and personal essays. What we've learned as we have done this workshop in the past is that the kids do a much better job of responding to those essays in the scholarship application, and therefore they do better not just on this application for the Grand Island Public Schools Foundation, but they do better on all of their scholarship applications. And so we are grateful to have George with us tonight. He will be presenting, and we are going to record this presentation so that we can access it later on our website. So just so you're aware, the presentation is being recorded. You can put your questions in the chat. I'll be watching that for George and interrupting as needed to be able to get those questions answered. So I'm going to turn it over to George, and you'll have to unmute yourself, George, and we'll get ready to roll.
Thanks, Tracy. Good evening, everyone. I'm glad to be here with you to talk about scholarship essays and as I say here in this first slide, how to score points, earn money, and change the world in about 500 words. I know at the beginning of this process it can be daunting, and so my first recommendation is to relax. There's a good process to go through. This is the first of 3 workshops that I think would be beneficial to you as you go through the process of applying for scholarships and in moving through that process. A little bit about my background. I am a writer. I've been a writer for a long time, and I've also been a teacher for a long time. And one of the things I've done as a teacher is I've written recommendations. I've also had students bring their college essays to me many times to ask me for direction and advice, and so I've seen college essays throughout the years, and some good, some bad, and lots of them in between. I also, when I was in graduate school, I also worked at the admissions office at the University of Nebraska. Although at that time the college essay wasn't as important, I can tell you that how you presented yourself on an application form in any form of writing was extremely important. So here's a couple things about writing that I think you need to understand. That, you know, writing is the way we, at least in the workplace, communicate. Maybe it's not always with a pencil and paper, as this young guy in this slide is depicted, but it is mostly electronic, but it's still the form of communication that's preferred in the workplace. And because of that, you're going to gain a certain type of reputation by how well you communicate in writing. And so, you know, writing is incredibly important, and you'll find out as you go through a process, for example, with essays, but it does not have to be a barrier. And so what we're trying to do with these workshops is help you become more comfortable with the process and also improve your ability to communicate. And then the last thing is some research there about studies that say that at the top of the list of things that determine whether you're going to be good in an organization or an institution is if you have good written and communication skills. So I think probably most of you know that. Here's a little inspiration for you from Red Barber, who was an old sports journalist. Writing is easy, you just have to open up a vein. And here's one. You can't get to the promised land of scholarship money without doing it. So you have to write the essay. And as this says here, it's better than the one that was never written. Some other things to think about here as we just kind of go through these slides and talk about writing. This has a lot to do with your confidence and a lot to do with how you feel about what you're doing. And so these workshops are a way for you to prepare yourself to be confident if you if you know what you're doing, you're going to have a lot more confidence than if you go in blindly. So I'm glad you're here tonight with us, and let's get started talking about writing in college scholarship essays. Tonight, that's what we're going to be doing. Tomorrow night, there's a presentation from a senior high counselor. And then on December 1st at 7, also, there is a foundation online application workshop that is specific to the process that you go through with the Grand Island Public Schools Foundation. So I would really encourage you to do all three of these. Tonight, what we're going to do is I'm going to give you 7 steps to write the essay. I'm going to talk about some home runs, some examples of really good essays, and then we'll leave time for you to ask us some questions. Buried in there, in the 7 steps, are also some specific writing hints and tips that you can use to make your essay shine a little bit. So here's the first thing that I would do is I think you need to have a sense of where you're going here. There are many types of scholarships. There are many types of questions that the people giving the scholarships away might ask you to write about. There are things here that I've listed: the Grand Island Public Schools Foundation scholarship process. A particular college that perhaps you've applied to might have their own process that they go through. They might ask you a question to write on a subject totally different than one you've encountered in any other place. Many organizations give away scholarships, and they have their own specific details. And then there's a variety of scholarships that don't fit into any of those things. So, and then there's the category that many of you, I hope you're not in them, but you could be, and that is you really haven't decided who you want to apply, where you want to apply, and how, and we'll talk a little bit about that tonight. So you need to narrow your choices. You need to start deciding who am I going to send an essay to, and you need to do that soon. So we're going to start at the perfect place to start, and that is at the beginning. All right, this is a process. This is a process. So here's I want you to stick with the game plan. So the first thing that I'm going to have you do is I want to assess where you are, all right, where you are in the process. And then you need to know who you're going to be talking to. I've listed that as audience here. And you have to determine what it is that they want you to say. And the last thing I think you need to talk about or to realize is, are you eligible for the scholarship? Some scholarships have very specific requirements. For example, a scholarship might not be open to people from, it might be only open to people in a certain activity, like a sport or something. So you need to really understand your eligibility. So know where you are, know who you're talking to, determine what it is they want you to say, and then whether or not you're eligible to say it. Down here at the bottom at this link at the Grand Island Public Schools Foundation, there are guidelines that you can check out. There's a number of those guidelines. I really encourage you to do that if you go to the foundation webpage and click on the guidelines. It's really an important part of the process. So once you have a game plan somewhat established where you want to go, and you can only do that by reading these directions very carefully, then you need to start asking yourself some questions. So here's an example of the Jeremy Buckner Memorial Scholarship. It's a 500-word essay question. That's the maximum amount. In a little while, I'm going to talk to you about word limits. So write a personal essay on why you are applying for this scholarship. Now that is a very wide lens. That's very vague. So can you answer that question? Do you know who Jeremy Buckner was? What were his accomplishments? When did he go to Grand Island Senior High School? What kind of a person was he? If you can find out information about this scholarship and about Jeremy Buckner, you're going to be way ahead of the game in determining what it is you want to say. The Dream Big, Work Hard, Stay Humble Sam Foltz Memorial Scholarship is another example of these. Again, it's an essay question of 500 words. This has a little bit more direction to it. They ask you to tell you about your dreams for the next 5 years. What is it that you want to accomplish? And they also ask you what it means to you to stay humble. Here, they're going to ask you to show that you've done what I suggested you do in the Jeremy Buckner Scholarship, and that is you've done enough research to understand and are familiar with who Sam was and what Sam did. So in this direction, they're really looking for you to understand who Sam Foltz was. I would venture to guess that you're going to need to do the same thing for the Jeremy Buckner thing. The idea here in these two scholarships and these two directions is that you really need to know who you're applying to, what it is they want you to tell them, and if you're eligible to do that. The second step is you have to really read what the prompt says. What the prompt says. And then I would suggest that you answer 3 questions. What are they asking you to do? All right. Who's going to be reading what you write? Most times they'll tell you, is it a committee? Who's going to do that? And how will they assess my essay? Okay. Again, this is oftentimes I have found in the past, students just jump right into the writing of it and they don't really read what it is they're supposed to do. So read the prompt very carefully, what it is you want to do. So for example, here's the Kaufmann-Cummings Trust Scholarship, asking you to assess what it's been like in the 4 years you've been at Grand Island Senior High School. And they specifically want to know about your character and how that has, how your character has been formed and shaped, and how that process, that evolution, is prepared you for college. So this one, you know, if I was going to sit down and do this one, I'm going to have to sit down. I'm going to have to jot down some notes. Well, what's life been like? I mean, you're seniors now. How have you changed in the 4 years? What has changed you? Did you get involved in an activity? Did band change your life? Were you cast in the play as a member of the chorus as a freshman, and you had the lead as a senior, and how did that change your life? Where did you hang your hat in activities? Maybe you had a particular class that really changed you at school. Those are all things that I think you need to jot down and consider and think about before you start to actually write this essay. Know where you're going. Know where you're going. This is a time that you need to think about things. Which leads me to my next inspirational little slide here. It's important what you're doing, so think about it. Think about it. The third step that I would talk about is continue to thinking about it, and then what I call bounce it. Bounce it. So bounce it off a parent, bounce it off a friend, bounce it off a teacher, and see what their response to it is. Okay. When I say brainstorm and pitch, after you've kind of got this, I think you need to get it in a form where you have an idea, and then you pitch or you try to sell that idea to somebody, where you say to a friend or a parent, again, whomever, this is what I'm going to write about. What do you think? What do you think? All right, it's part of the research process. So what you've done is you've thought about these scholarships. You've thought about who's the audience is going to be. You thought about what it is they're asking me. So you get down some ideas, you try to sell these ideas to somebody orally, and then you take all that information and now you're ready to put something down on paper that's going to start sticking. Make an outline. Doesn't have to be a formal outline. Maybe it's just a bunch of notes. The way I work is I write in little bit. If I'm writing something like this, I write in little patches. I start writing. Some people just write the whole thing down and go back and edit it out. But get something down. It's better to take things away than to try to add things at the end. So get something down in outline form or even further than that. Again, the writing rubric here, there's a link to that. That writing rubric is on the Public Schools Foundation website. And it'll help you get through what that process looks like and feels like. Okay, so this has a little bit to do with the structure of your essay. So when I say slap them upside the head, what I want you to do is I want you to get their attention. All right, you need a really strong beginning to your essay. All right, don't roll into this thing. On the other hand, I don't want you screaming and yelling either. And this is going to take a little time, but you need to find some sort of way to get their attention. All right, you'll look at some of the examples tonight that we're going to look at. You'll see that how they got their attention. And after you get their attention and write an incredible essay, you don't want to fade at the finish either. So you need to be strong in all three parts of your essay, in the beginning, in the middle, and at the end. All right. Now the middle, the meat of this thing is really, you'll know what to say if you've done the work ahead of time. But the beginning and the end both need attention. They both need attention. And again, in the examples, we'll point some of those things out. The third thing about clarity and conciseness and being careful is you need to get there before they leave. Now, this is really an issue where they don't really have a word maximum. Most of them have a word maximum. But, you know, you've probably had a friend or know somebody who can't tell a joke in less than 15 minutes. You need to get there before they leave. In other words, keep them engaged. That's why I think it's really good when you have word limits that you have to try to get to the point right away. One of the exercises I like to do if I teach a writing class is called 6-word stories, where you try to write an entire story in 6 words. And it's a great exercise because you're trying to condense and be concise, all right? And then the last thing is every word should have a reason for being there, every word. So this is connected to the editing process, which comes later in the 7 steps. But every word should be, you should have a reason. So clarity and conciseness doesn't mean short, it means to the point. It means to the point. So good finish, or good start, good finish. Make sure that you say it and get out of there, and then make sure every word belongs. And here's a couple quotes that I like to use about words. There's Twain's quote about which words you should use. And then Thomas Jefferson, never use 2 words when one will do. All right, again, that doesn't mean that you have to be short, but you can be concise. Okay, so to that end, here's some ideas that will make your essay, you'll do much better on your essay, all right? So the first thing is words such as this, that, these, and those, they need a partner. What I mean by that is if you use any of those words and the reader is unclear as to what you're referring to, you're going to lose them. You're going to lose them. This is a particular problem. This is a particular problem if you start a sentence with one of those words, all right? if I say, I like school because I was in band and I played basketball and I was in the spring play, you know, and if I start the next sentence, this made me really happy. Well, was it all three? Was it one? Even if you think it's obvious, it's not necessarily obvious to the reader. So check those words, this, that, these, and those. Make sure they have a partner. Make sure that the reference to that word is clear. So I will take this with me. Guess what? Take my lunch. Okay, redundancy is really a problem. It's particularly a problem when you're trying to reach a word limit. You know, it's a word limit. You don't have to go right to it. I've had this experience teaching writing classes or giving an assignment where I say, you know, write 300 words on the sunrise or something. Well, in order to get 300 words, people just pack all kinds of unnecessary words in there. I call that hamburger helper writing, where you don't have enough for a full meal, so you add things to it. This sentence is a good example. She will be home in a period of 3 months. Well, she will be home in 3 months. In a period of, and you don't need it. So check yourself for redundancies. This one is egregious. It has come to my attention that there is a vast proliferation of undesirable vegetation surrounding the periphery of this facility. I mean, who writes like that? Who talks like that? I've noticed many weeds growing around the building. All right, those are, so later we're going to talk about staying in your verbal lane. In other words, you need to, you know, don't get out the thesaurus and fill your paper full of words you don't understand. Write, you know, write the way you would communicate. She was a woman who, he was a man who, those are really debilitating. She was a woman who knew what she wanted. In other words, what you should write is, she knew what she wanted. Redundancies. This phrase, due to the fact that, right there, due to the fact that, that phrase is debilitating. I can tell you right now that if you never use that phrase again as a writer, your life will be just grand. Do not use it. It doesn't do anything. As a matter of fact, this word, unless you're talking about an actual fact in a trivia game or something like that, don't use it. Jose did not arrive on time. I mean, you can get it. I don't need to read it to you. All right. Okay, so redundancies. A related cousin to redundancies is a pleonasm. And a pleonasm is when you use what I call inane words and phrases. For example, past history. Well, history is always past. That's why it's history. And while it's not a mortal sin, I will tell you that when I read essays, college essays, or particularly for college essays, I would notice these things, and you know, pleonasms are things that you find if you do a good edit. If you do a good edit, you can look up the word pleonasm. If you Google it, there's about 1,000 common pleonasms. You don't have to memorize them all. I'm giving you some examples here, but just make sure that when you edit and when somebody helps you edit, that you look for these kinds of inane phrases. Final outcome. It's always an outcome's final. Plan ahead, things like that. All right. And some of them are common. Free gift. You see free gift? You see that all the time in the newspaper or in an advertising. Show up for a free gift. Well, if it's a gift, it's free, isn't it? Okay, number 4 here is I suggest you try to use active voice. I'm sure you've done this in your writing classes at school. make sure the subject of your sentence is doing the action. If at all possible, try to do that all the time. A decision to vote on the issue was made by the committee this week. Well, that's a passive voice sentence. It's better to make it active voice and give the subject, the committee, that they're doing something. The committee decided, okay? So you try to use active voice, okay? When you see the word by, oftentimes you're using passive voice. So check for that. The other thing that'll do, I think, it will make your sentences, it'll shorten them to the point to where they're stronger. When you use passive voice, you need to add words. If you're not concise, those words start to bend at the beginning and the end of the sentences. You want your sentence to be strong all the way through. And so I would really try to use active voice sentences. The fifth thing I want you to notice is called an expletive construction. And that is when you start sentences. This is somewhat related to what I showed you earlier. Start sentences with there are, it is, there is. That's called an expletive construction. And what it does is, if you look at that sentence, there are 4 officers who report to the captain. Well, what's the subject of that sentence? What's going on there? Well, what's going on is that 4 officers report to the captain. There are is unnecessary, all right? We often do it with it as well. If we start the sentence with it, we're not sure what it is. It is freezing this morning. Well, what is freezing? Well, it is freezing, but what is it? What is it? We don't know. Be specific. Temperature's 28 degrees. Okay, guess what? It's below freezing. It's freezing. So what I do with expletive constructions is just do a search. When you get your essay done, do a search for the word there. If it's at the beginning of the sentence, rewrite it. All right. You can also do a search for the word it. Now, it might appear in other ways, might take you a little longer, but I think it's worth your while to do that search. The 6th thing here in clarity and conciseness is denotation and connotation. If you look a word up in the dictionary, what you find is denotation. It tells you what the word means. A connotation is how the word is used and how we recognize it with emotional meaning, or a meaning that's understood. In that sense, words can have different connotations. For example, the word in this sentence, she was sneaky when it came to handing out compliments. So in this sentence, does sneaky mean malicious, or does it mean tricky? Now, if it's malicious, that has a bad connotation. That has a negative connotation. If it's tricky, it has somewhat of a positive connotation as someone who might be clever at something. Make sure that when you use a word that might have differing connotations, that it's clear to the reader what connotation you mean. If it's not clear, and if you can't make it clear, use a different word. Use a different word. All right, so I'm going to back up here to, so clarity, conciseness, and be careful. All those things, all the way through to the end that I showed you, will help you do that. Okay, so that's kind of some nuts and bolts about the writing process. So now what is it you want to say? All right. I suggest that within reason, you make it personal. I mean, this is an essay, most of the time they're asking you to tell them something about you. All right. If we go back to the Sam Foltz scholarship, we're talking about, or the Kaufmann-Cummings, we're talking about character. How has your character changed? Well, you know, they don't want a treatise on character. They don't want a book report on character. They want to know about your character. So it's okay to make this personal. So, and passion and emotion, okay, are within reason, okay, okay. So pathos and ethos and logos, which you probably have talked about in your English classes, is a nice mix of logos, which means you're using reason, pathos, you're using some emotion, and ethos, you have the credibility to be saying these things. Well, certainly you have the credibility to say it about your own life. I changed at Grand Island Senior High School because of my biology class, because I was made a section leader in band, because I was captain of the football team, because I wrote for the Islander. All those things are personal, all right? So you can add those in there. Now the way to do that are to, and we'll talk about this in a little more detail here, is to add some details and examples, okay? Some details and examples. Don't tell us it's really good to have a good character. Tell us, you know, show us how you have changed your character. That's what they're asking. Changed your character. Use real life specific examples. And again, get it all down. If it's more than 500 words, if 500 words is the word limit and you get it all down and it's 750, just get out the red pen. You'll get there. You'll get there. Get it down. Tell the stories concisely and to the point. Then the last thing about perspective is do not whine, okay? Some of you may have really tragic things that have happened that you want to write about, but stay positive when you do. Stay positive. You need to tell stories where good has come from that, where good is that you've learned from negative things, if that's what you're going to write about. So that's really important, is staying positive on that. And there's a little something with motion. So here's a triangle that kind of shows what I was talking about. This comes from persuasive ad techniques, what advertisers use, but if you're trying to persuade somebody to give you $1,000 to go to college, I think you need to employ some persuasive techniques. And advertisers do it using the three parts of this. They use logic and reason. That's a good idea. And here's why it's a good idea. They use emotion and feelings. This has happened to me. This is what I felt about it. And then at the top of that is my credibility. And you're writing about yourself, so you have the most credibility in that regard. So try to employ all three. Okay, let's talk about some details, what I call sweating the small stuff and naming names. Tell me things that are specific to what you're saying. So that first sentence, warm paint colors can have a stimulating effect on a room's inhabitants. Okay, well, I could say that and the reader would go, oh, that's, okay. But if you tell me red and pink, the reader, it's an anchor for the reader. The reader thinks, well, I'm in a pink room right now. Or, they think about that experience. It's a small little detail, but it really makes a difference when you write, all right? So the next sentence, I'll read what you shouldn't write. When going to a formal dinner, it is important to wear your best clothing. Well, that's fine, okay? Well, what's your best clothing? Well, tell them what it is. When going to a formal dinner, it's important to wear your best suits, tie, and shoes if you were a guy, all right? So again, it's small little things, but it makes a difference. The sentence, John could jump high, tells me something about John. But the sentence, John threw a thunderous dunk over Millard West's 6'7" center, tells me about something about John and paints a picture about how John does that. Much better sentence, okay? So anytime you can add a specific to colors, red and pink. Add a specific to best clothing, suit, tie, shoes. Add a specific to jump high. Well, a thunderous dunk over somebody 6'7", that's a specific. So look where you can do that. Look where you can do that. Here's some more examples. I could have stopped the sentence, when you go camping, always make sure to pack first aid supplies, period. Name a few, all right? The sentence, learning is aided by hands-on experience. I don't think anyone would argue with that sentence, but it's, you know, it's pretty meh, you know. The students in Mr. Soccer's history class built models of Civil War battlegrounds with their own hands and then reenact the battles in class. By acting out the events of history, they learned to see how those events fit together and how some caused others. Much more detail, the sentence is much more alive. Technically, there's nothing wrong with this sentence. Learning is aided by hands-on experience. It's fine. But this sentence just sings. It just sings. So that's what I'd like you to think about is, how can I make my sentences sing? So that's the small stuff. Okay, here's some, the lightning round slide here. Should you begin your essay with, in this essay or in my opinion? No, full stop. Okay, no. Once you write, once an essay uses first person, and it probably will, I know it's your opinion. It's you. You say I don't need it. It's not, remember in the earlier slide I said get their attention. You're not going to get their attention in this essay. Should I research the organization sponsoring the scholarship? Yes, absolutely, yes. It gives you a leg up on the people that don't, all right? Should I trust only spell check and grammar check for proofing? No, don't do that. Spell check does not know the difference between form and from, all right? It doesn't know that. So I'm going to tell you in a minute how you're going to, a good way to do the editing and proofing, but don't trust them only, all right? I think you should use them, but don't trust them explicitly, all right? Should my focus be on asking for the money? No, all right? Should I use words from a thesaurus that are completely new to me? No, don't do that. Should I open with a quote? Generally, no. Exceptions. If I was doing the Kaufmann-Cummings scholarship, for example, and I was writing about one of the things that shaped my character was my English teacher in my junior year in high school. And that English teacher always said the same thing, and it's the thing that really changed your life, gave you something new to your character, then that would make sense. That would make sense. But don't open with a quote, and because you have to, if you do open with a quote, you got to do something with it right away. You got to get to the point of the quote. And while you're getting to the point of the quote, you're wasting words towards 500 words. So I would try to do it without, unless you have a really compelling example. And if you don't know, ask other people what they think. Okay, so there's some, that the lightning round's over. It is time to rest. Time to rest. Okay, so this has to do with your attitude. So good writing, I wrote for a long time for a newspaper, and I wrote on deadline, and oftentimes I had to write in a hurry, and I couldn't do this what this little guy's doing. I could not rest. The process of writing college essays is best if you cook it slowly. Don't flash fry it. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is if you start now. I hope you've already looked at some of these things. But if you start now and you have a January 30th deadline on something, or even later, and you work and use a process and a game plan, you're going to have time to rest. Not just because you need to rest, but also you need to think about what you've been doing. You need to think about what you've been doing. So I think that it's important to, if you leave yourself the time to let what you've written sit for a while, then come back to it. Then come back to it. That's only possible. It is only possible if you give yourself the time to do that. So get out the slow cookers. Okay. Also part of that process is, once you get back to it in the 6th step, I want you to be a ruthless editor. One error can taint an entire essay. I cannot tell you, you can write the heck out of something. It can sing and dance and be beautiful. And if you misspell a common word or something in the next to last sentence, it's going to stick out. It's going to stick out. Now, I might not ding, if I was assessing that, I might ding you completely because of that, but it tells me something. It tells me something. So, how are you a ruthless editor? ABC. Here's A. Insist on it being yours. Okay? Or who else is going to do it? So, one of the things that's important is, does this essay sound like you? Is it you? I mean, is it the rhythm of your language? Is it the words you use? Is it the story you tell? Make sure this is you, all right? If it's not, it's going to sound stilted. It's going to sound stilted. One of the best ways I have found is to have people read what I write who know me, all right? Who know me. And I think that's really important. I think that's really important. So the essay is yours, write like it's yours. Second thing, proofread, edit, and have 3 others edit. All right. There's a difference between proofreading and editing. All right. Proofreading looks for typos, misspellings, the nuts and bolts of things. Some of those usage things that I talked about, pleonasms, those can all be part of proofreading. They're also a little part of editing, but editing is also, does this make sense? Does this belong in this place? What does this mean? All those questions need to be answered. And then have 3 other people edit your work. Now, don't give it to a friend of yours who's getting a D+ in English. Don't do that. Give it to people who you trust to edit, all right? Who you trust to edit. And have them look for those sorts of things. Then once you get it back, okay, rewrite it, rinse and repeat. Have somebody else read it again. One of the questions I always ask at the end of something I write is, well, if I read this, what would my questions be? What would my questions be? Well, so your 11th grade English teacher changed your life. Well, if you don't tell them how, the question is going to be, well, how? So things like that, all right? Things like that, all right? So it's a process. It's going to take some time. It's going to take a team effort. And then that's my last ABC. Give your time yourself. You got to be good. All right. Make it yours. Be ruthless with your editing, and give yourself time to be good. And you'll be good. I know you will. All right. A couple other things. The thesaurus is a great tool. It is a great tool, but don't use words that you're totally unfamiliar with. All right. You can change a word if you want to use query for question. I don't know why you would, but maybe you want to. That's fine. But make sure it sounds like you, and these words are, you're not just using fancy words to try to impress somebody, because normally it doesn't. So use the thesaurus with use it gently, all right? Then, you know, people don't talk about this, but oh God, you got to punctuate correctly. I'm sure you've seen something like this. Let's eat grandpa versus let's eat grandpa. So little things like that count. Make sure it's all in the right place. That's all part of the proofreading process. All right. Don't get sloppy with it. Again, you know, it's a effort. It's a team effort, and you really need to pay attention to those details. All right. I'm sure you can all write something really terrific, but make sure that you get all the parts in place and things in places that need to be. All right. Here's two sentences. I'm going to read them out loud because what I'm talking about here is rhythm, the rhythm to your writing. Don't be monotonous. If you have sentences all of the same length and structure, it will be monotonous. This sentence has 5 words. Here are 5 more words. 5-word sentences are fine, but several together become monotonous. The sounds of it drone. It's like a stuck record. The ear demands some variety. Okay, so obviously you don't want to do that. Now listen, I vary the sentence length and I create music. Music. The writing sings. It has a pleasant rhythm, a lilt, a harmony. I use short sentences, and I use sentences of medium length, and sometimes, when I am certain the reader is rested, I will engage him with a sentence of considerable length, a sentence that burns with energy and builds with all the impetus of a crescendo, the roll of the drums, the crash of the cymbals, sounds that say, listen to this. It is important. Okay, I wish I would have written that sentence. That's a beautiful sentence. And as you can see, there's a variety of sentence lengths. So think about that. Think about the rhythm. How do I get to that? Read it aloud. Read it aloud. Have somebody read it aloud to you. You can probably find software that will read it back to you on your computer. All that stuff helps. Okay, last thing here. I want you to assemble a good flight crew, all right? Don't be a hero trying to do this by yourself, all right? I know you're smart. I know you're good at what you do. It's always better when you have other people on your team. So parents, siblings, friends, teachers, word nerds. I'm a word nerd. And then soar, all right? Then soar, because they all want you to do well. They all want you to do well. So start putting together a team right now. People that can help you do this stuff. Okay, so Tracy, I think, is going to put a link in the chat. Is that right, Tracy? And don't close your Zoom, and then read the essay. It's essay 1A. Starts since childhood. If you would do that, take a few minutes to do that. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about this. I'm not sure if it's kind of hard to tell if you finished or not, but I'm going to go ahead and just say a couple things about this first one. First of all, if you look at what they're asking this person to do, they want to know your strengths and achievements, and they want to know them in some sort of unique way and connect them somehow to what's happened in your life and how it's changed you and so on. So what I like about this particular essay is it really has the personal touch. I feel as though I know this person after I've read this. In the beginning, situations inflicted on me in that first sentence, at first you think, oh my goodness, but it's very optimistic. There's a very optimistic tone to this writing. And I find, he talks about his brother, all kinds of things that happen there. And then we get some payoff at the end. About, National Honor Society, College Prep Academy. So this is a great example. I think that this, making it personal, I think this this prompt really lends itself to that as well. But this writer really paid that off. Optimism comes through here, and then what happened in the writer's life is connected to what the writer wants to do, and it's a clear connection. So I really like that sort of thing. So okay, let's go on to essay 1B. If you would read that one, please. Okay, let's talk a little bit about our distance runner here. She's writing about perseverance and how that has, I mean, that is the strength and that she's writing about here. And she's relating it to one single event, this half marathon that she ran. And so that's the thing, but she really pays it off in a way. You know, I mean, she tells the story of how, you know, she threw up halfway through the race and all these other things. But then she connects that to, and the second thing I say here, she connects her skills and the details of her skills about being a leader, and she comes out on the other end not only with perseverance but with a lot of confidence, at the end there. So the other thing is she's not afraid to be descriptive. You know, my breakfast hit the sidewalk, or my breakfast decided to visit the sidewalk, I guess is what she said. So, you know, things like that. I get, you know, unfortunately I get that picture, but still she's, you know, showing us, just rather than telling us I threw up, my breakfast hit the sidewalk. Two different things. So, all right, let's go on to a different prompt in essay, I got to the wrong one here. 2A, would you read essay 2A, please? This is the prompt from the Kaufmann-Cummings Foundation. However, years at Grand Island Senior High shaped your character, prepared you for college. All right, I want to talk a little bit about this one. I really like this. I really like this one. One of the things I like about it is the way it starts, that single word, confidence. I mean, I know what it's going to be about. And obviously the writer has confidence to start a sentence, to start an essay with a single word. And so it's really a nice touch to get into. This is what he's gained in senior high. Following the prompt, wants to know about character and how's it prepared you for college. You know, he talks a lot about his ROTC unit, AP classes, the challenge of those, and so on. The second thing is that the writing itself is real clear, and there's a certain economy in his sentences that I appreciate. I think that you can learn, if you look at this would be a good one to study, to mix up sentence lengths, those types of things as well. And then the third thing is his choice of words. Inoculation. Let me find the sentence. It was, in a sense, an inoculation against closed-mindedness. Great, good stuff. You know, good stuff. That's not a word you just dig out of his arse. Well, I know what inoculation is, but if you would have said a shot against, that wouldn't have worked. Inoculation, it's just the rhythm of it and the idea of it. Very good, very good. So there's a lot to like about this one. Obviously the content's good, but great structure, and this is really a good example of how to approach this prompt from Kaufmann-Cummings. Okay, let's look at one more Kaufmann-Cummings. That's 2B. This is someone who came from a small school to senior high. Okay, another good structure very well structured and organized. Tells us at the end of the first paragraph, the writer's talking about, you're going to hear about professionalism, academics, and leadership, and we do. All right, we do. Very positive, very enthusiastic. The only thing I would change about this one is I'm not a big fan of exclamation points. And I think they might work on Twitter or Instagram, but I'm not sure in a college essay. So I wouldn't use one. That would be my only suggestion on this. Okay, we kind of went through those fairly quickly, and I'm sorry. We want to make sure we leave time for some questions for you, if you have any questions of us. So let me just review kind of what we're talking about here. Get a process, establish a process, and a game plan. All right. Don't do this willy-nilly, as they like to say. All right. Don't just shrug and say, you got to get a game plan going. Give yourself some goals to set. I'm going to do this by this time, this by this time. Put it on the calendar. Get it going. All right. Put it in your phone. Make sure that you know what's going on. Reading is believing. Make sure you know what is asked of you. Who are you writing for? What do they want you to say? Okay. And are you eligible for the scholarship? Do a little research. Okay. Or maybe do a lot of research, but know what you're talking about. Okay, it'll give you great confidence. Clarity, conciseness, be careful. Make sure all those little details, using the right words, those writing tips in there that I gave you, all those are important. Be yourself, okay? Be honest about your experience. If you look at the examples that we read tonight, again, you'll see that those people are honest about their experience, okay? Give yourself time to rest, let it sit for a day or two, and then get in there and edit in beast mode. Do not fall in love with your first draft. Do not. Your first draft will break your heart. You need to edit ruthlessly, okay? And then put together a good group. You don't have to do this by yourself, all right? Some other suggestions. The Grand Island Public Schools Foundation Scholarship has a checklist and tips on their website. I think I think they put some links in the chat for you to explore that. Proofread, do not use your name. She'll talk more about that in another workshop, but do not use your name. Get started early. There's a good checklist, follow it. That's part of the game plan, all right? These are personal statements specific to GIPS Foundation. And so be familiar with these. Be familiar with these. Give yourself a chance to think about these before you write about them. There's a rubric that we talked about already. Study the other essays. Okay, maybe you like some things, maybe you didn't. Maybe something might not be good for you, might be good for others. And then make sure that you're connecting with the scholarships. You know these scholarships, you know what they're asking to, and again, stick to the checklist. Just a reminder, after tomorrow night, a counselor, there'll be a counselor presentation. Talk to you more specifically about the details of working through the process of applications. And then in the following 2 weeks, on December 1st, the foundation, Tracy and Candy will talk to you about the foundation's online application, which is the best thing around. I'm telling you, it is the best thing around. Okay, let me check my chat and see if I have questions for me. These are all links, right? Okay, good. All right, so that leaves questions. Do you have questions of me or Tracy specific to the foundation?
George, do you want to unshare your screen?
Yep.
And then if you want to ask a question without having to type in the chat, you certainly can unmute yourself, and it would be great to see your face too. Are you seeing
Okay.
George in
Yeah,
the chat?
I see it. Yeah. Carlos, hello.
I'll take it.
You want to take that one? I think
Yeah.
that's, and Emmeline, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, Emmeline. Go ahead.
Carlos, how do we find if a place has scholarships? How can we get more scholarship options? So tomorrow night is going to be the counselor presentation from Mr. Niederklein. He will have an explanation of where you find the scholarships that we know about. And so I would suggest that you come tomorrow night and watch that. And then that program in 2 weeks, I will take you through the online process for the GIPS Foundation application, which is if you don't fill out more than 2 or 3 scholarship applications, that should be one that you do, because it's one application and you can get in the pile for more than 100 scholarships just by filling out the one application. Very comprehensive, but it is one app. And so, but Mr. Niederklein will have a lot of other opportunities, and he'll be able to, kind of show you where to go to find them.
Thank you, Tracy. Anybody else?
George, this is Mr. Niederklein.
Hi.
I'm the school counselor, and I just want to thank you for your time and your expertise. It was great, and I wish I would have had it in high school. I think I would have wrote a lot better essays and probably had more college paid for. So thank you. We're going to share with a bunch of students tomorrow too. So
Perfect. Great. Yeah. And if Mr. Niederklein, if you ever have students that have specific questions, you can get a hold of me through Tracy. I mean, I'm more than willing to ask if somebody has something specific.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You bet.
Okay, well, if there's no other questions, we will call it a night, and we may see you back here tomorrow night. Thank you very much for coming. And again, this is recorded. It will be put up on our website. We put a bunch of those links in tonight, so hopefully you're now familiar with where to find us. We'll be putting that up on our website, and we will also be putting a translated version up on our website. So, there's always a lot of help ahead, and always reach out to myself or Candy, our scholarship guru, Candy Weimers, and we'll take care of you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.